So I'm really bullish about getting all those tools in the hands of people so that we can sort of just have this explosion of creativity and make that available and share for other customers.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Unsafe Harbor Podcast, a podcast sharing tips for your Workday tenant and your Workday career. In today's episode, we'll be talking to Shannon Whitley. Shannon is a director of people operations and systems for a customer in the tech industry. He's been part of the ecosystem for 10 plus years and has been part of multiple Workday implementations. I initially learned about Shannon through his Boomerang integration, and wow, am I so glad that I learned about his LinkedIn and GitHub pages. Shannon might be one of the best in the ecosystem when it comes to creating contributed solutions. Be sure to check out Shannon's LinkedIn and GitHub pages. You will not regret it. Just as a heads up, this conversation happened before Workday Rising this year. We do talk about technical tools and AI, but obviously we don't cover anything that may have been announced at Rising. With all of that said, let's jump into my conversation with Shannon. How did you first get started with Workday? Where have you found kind of a sweet spot within the ecosystem, and what are some of the things that you're up to now?
Yeah, I guess my Workday journey really starts with my PeopleSoft journey.
Okay.
So, I was a big user of PeopleSoft back in the day, and I started out my career as a developer, an application developer, inside of enterprise application groups. And so we worked with PeopleSoft quite a bit. We did a lot of database work, which I've just always really enjoyed working with databases and writing SQL and all kinds of data management. And so eventually, there was the Oracle buyout of PeopleSoft, and we looked around and wanted to move to a new tool. And Workday made sense. It had a lot of the features we were looking for. It had a growing community, and especially at the time, it was really on the cutting edge with movement to the cloud and its focus on mobile. So made that shift, and I've been in the Workday ecosystem now about 12 years, I would say. And yeah, I agree. Really enjoy working with people in the community. It's a very open community. They folks like to share and talk about their different experiences. It's always fun to go to Rising, where I get to meet a lot of different people, or maybe some users groups. But yeah, I've enjoyed it as well. And the product keeps getting better and better. I mean,
Absolutely.
Workday is committed, to improving the tools. So yeah, I really enjoy it, and it's something that I look forward to continuing.
Awesome. Yeah. And honestly, I have just been a huge fan of yours ever since I've entered the ecosystem. In fact, my manager was the person who told me about you, and told me to research all of your community posts as thoroughly as possible, because she really loved your solutions, specifically with the Boomerang. And so yeah, became an early fan very, very quickly into my tenure with my current organization.
I appreciate that. It's great to hear that feedback. And yeah, boomerangs. I love working on boomerangs, and
Yes,
so the
yes.
fact that I've been able to help some people along the way. Most of the time, the things that I develop are things that I need or want. And so if I'm able to share and other people are able to use them, that really makes me happy.
Yeah, that has been, for me personally, inspirational. I just love how you are creating, number one, and number two, packaging your learnings in such a way that it's easy to apply, it's easy to understand. I think you have really hit such a sweet spot for contributed solutions, and I'm just absolutely in awe, like fascinated by that. Definitely, thanks again for all that you do for all of us in the ecosystem. So I do want to talk about kind of an idea, a principle that you've been a major advocate of, and that is opening up the Extend SKU to be available to all customers. You've been pretty vocal about that on LinkedIn. What is it about Extend that makes you advocate for that position? And how do you see that changing the landscape of the Workday ecosystem, in your opinion?
Great question. And, I'm glad that I started off by mentioning PeopleSoft because I think that's a component of, why I have this position around Workday and Workday Extend is, as part of the PeopleSoft product, you automatically had access to people tools. And so being able to, whenever you needed to think outside what was delivered, and there were so many times when it was important to be able to do something specific for your particular business, and having those tools available to develop something to meet a need, and especially to be able to do it in the tool that you're working in every day and not have to go to another tool to try to get involved in. That's really powerful. And yes, there's the con that especially with those tools with PeopleSoft, you could do too much development and you get too far
Right.
away from vanilla, and that became its own sort of monster to deal with. But the good thing about Workday is the way they've delivered Extend is it really gives you the right amount of powerful tools, but it also gives you guardrails so that you're not getting too far away from the delivered product. They're still supporting you, and I really like the approach to that. The so that previous experience has led me to be just a big proponent, but also because of the development that I've done early on. I was really into, sort of as a hobby, into developing products around social media. And this was especially when Twitter first came out, and even Facebook, and a lot of the social media tools. And what I saw was that if you provided tools to developers, provided tools to people who wanted to create content, they did, and you ended up with a much richer platform than if you had just controlled it under the one company. So I really think that can continue to happen with Workday. I think we're kind of on that path already, but but I think if we can continue to do that, there's just so much more that can be contributed by all these creative people in the ecosystem, and I would love to see everybody be able to take advantage of that. So I'm really bullish about getting all those tools in the hands of people, so that we can sort of just have this explosion of creativity and make that available and share for other customers.
I'm curious to know, has anyone either officially or unofficially at Workday asked about your reasoning around this argument? Have you had any type of reception about this?
Oh, actually, yes. I do have several folks in Workday who have had some conversations with. I recently launched Workday. We implemented, and so that was one of the discussions. I was able to connect with my sales team, and we've talked about Workday Extend. That was part of one of the discussions I had because we purchased Workday Extend as part of our implementation. And so, yeah, I think there are a number of people who have been interested in talking about this. I think a lot of people in Workday are interested. Obviously there are a lot of different components that go into making those decisions,
Right.
especially with such a large company at this point. But yeah, to your point, I think there are a lot of people interested, and it's just that I think they're very cautious when it comes to rolling out things that, rightly so, they're worried about something becoming shelfware, right? If somebody delivers something and the customer doesn't use it, they want to keep the momentum going on the tool, and I think not have it become a negative in terms of the product. So I understand and appreciate it, but yeah, there have been quite a few people where I've been able to talk with folks, and so there's some potential there.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Speaking of potential, you alluded to this in your previous answer, but the built on Workday marketplace is it sounds like it's something that is going to be established at some point in the future, and may currently be established as right now. But the way that I understand that is that's the equivalent to, let's say, the Apple App Store on your iPhone, right? Where you'll be able to download certain solutions that a customer or maybe even a partner built an app around. Obviously, the logistics and the details are still coming together on that. But I'm curious to know, what do you feel is going to be, I guess, the biggest impact of the built on Workday marketplace? So what do you see happening there? What types of applications can you see a use for that?
I I do think it's going to take a bit to get to that point, right?
Okay.
And
Yep.
I mean, again, I think Workday is taking it slowly. There, what I've seen so far has been that partners can deliver
Yes.
items,
Yep.
and in a lot of cases, it becomes maybe a tool for the partner to promote their services. So we've had some good conversations. For instance, I've kind of kicked the tires on some things in the past, but it if it's a matter of sort of just selling additional services for a partner, or if it's really restrictive, my fear is that you're going to have a very small marketplace, and so I think that is the danger there. If on the flip side of that is if you open it up too much, you run the risk of having junk in there that could potentially be something that could hurt your business, right? So I think
Right.
that's the other component that you touched on actually is it's different when you think about your personal phone versus your enterprise application, right? You've
Right.
got to
Yep.
be not that we're not careful with our personal phones, but if you think about the millions of dollars and people that could be damaged if we do anything inappropriately with our corporate and enterprise systems, we've got to be even more diligent. And so there are so many hurdles around that part of the equation. I think to be careful and make sure that we're vetting and testing everything. So that's why I think it's going to probably take a while before we see things like availability from a customer standpoint to be able to go in and sell something. For instance, we it's probably a good thing to have quite a bit of vetting going on, and I have seen even with the things that I've shared that sometimes it's hard for people to take advantage of it because they have rules in place in their companies to sort of have everything reviewed and make sure that there's no damage is going to come through from rogue code. So it's a good thing. I totally support that. But at the same time, I think it's going to make it a challenge with something like this marketplace to determine how we can position some of these items. I think it could be done, and I think we can put the effort in to provide high quality and really useful tools. But there's a whole host of things that I think that's why we haven't seen it already is Workday has to think through like how do they support that, how do they guide that model.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And definitely decisions that I'm super glad I don't have to make myself. So not envious of that. But yeah, to your point, it feels like it's a step in the right direction. But that's to be determined, right? With the limited information that we have currently, it's an exciting development. Just for some context, I'm at an organization that does not currently have Extend. It's definitely something that we have entertained, but as far as I can understand it, it's not necessarily something that we are seriously considering anytime soon. What would be your argument for Extend? Right? What would be that argument to invest in it for, let's say, the average customer?
And that is a reason that I was so adamant about getting it extended as part of my initial implementation, right? It's hard to come back later
Yes.
and and sort of piecemeal these things together. But the product itself, I'm using it constantly. We've only been live for about 3 months now, so
Oh, wow.
I'm fairly new implementation, but I'm finding constant uses, and it's in the small things where we're hitting up against maybe either our own particular environment where we have certain tools that we need some custom work done, or our use case and our process flow just doesn't match exactly with the Workday delivered pages.
Mm. Yep.
And so if we can create something in Extend that helps us move a process, let's say from an admin perspective. Like right now, we may have to have a particular administrative function doing this, going through and adding this data because the delivered form is maybe just too rich for the persona we'd like to give it to, the persona that maybe has um, the really controls the data and manages the data. So if we could just roll out something that's simpler, and I just delivered an example this week around position creation, for
I saw
instance.
that. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so that's a good example of, if we rely on the Workday delivered tools, we just don't have a solution. We don't have a good solution, or we're using an external third party, form or something. So being able to use Extend, it gets us, it allows us to roll something out to maybe another group, and we can shift labor around, right? So it's going
Mm.
to be cost savings if we can get it into a group that maybe it's a lower lift in terms of the work that they're doing. It also helps us with being able to manage our data. So we're going to have better data quality because the person who's entering the data is actually the one responsible and familiar with it. So we that's what Workday Extend unlocks, is that extra capability that you need when you just need that little push that the Workday delivered items just don't exactly fit the bill. Maybe everything around it does, like Workday has the great business process already in place, and we're still using the delivered create position business process, for example, and everything else around it is perfect for us. But we were not able to use the delivered form, and so Extend really meets the need there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think when the typical person in the ecosystem thinks about Extend, they tend to jump to these massive applications, massive implementations. And you were mentioning that it's actually kind of smaller, right? The implementations that you've seen, especially to begin with. It sounds like these kind of micro apps are really, really helpful with the Extend SKU, right? Like those things are just as helpful as this incredible like $1 million application that is going to take 6 months to a year to build out, test, and launch. So yeah, absolutely, I can definitely see where that would be a major pro, is that you're not having to solve your business's biggest problem through a single application, but you can do that with all of these custom UIs, custom forms, shaping the data that's collected off of that, and just creating more of a unified experience for your organization.
Yeah,
That
I love
sounds
that term
amazing.
micro app. That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
yeah, for sure. So I would love to pick your brain about a functionality that has historically been part of the Extend SKU, but sounds like it is slowly but surely rolling out to become generally available, and that is the orchestrate for integrations. So I am so excited personally for this, because this is going to be something that impacts me a lot in my day to day. How do you see orchestrate for integrations impacting the way that customers build out Workday integrations?
I really like the tool. So I've enjoyed using it. I've written several orchestrations that I have in production today, and so I'm really pleased with the tool. I can see where Workday wants to go with it. I think it does make things a lot easier, visually, because you have this graphical interface. And I would say, when you compare it to a tool like Workday Studio, let's say, I think it's more accessible to people who maybe aren't, programmers. Maybe they have a background more. We talked a little bit about being both technical and functional.
Yep.
I think there's a sweet spot there where Orchestrate really makes it accessible to people, to more people. Uh, Having said that, with my experience with the tools, I think you're also going to continue to see Workday Studio being a useful tool and be a needed tool as well. I think because of the way, at least the current version, when you're building orchestrations, um, the it's difficult, or I would say, maybe not difficult, but just I think it can be challenging when you get to a very advanced or complex set of integrations. I think just the visual layout and the nature of it, makes it difficult to sort of build that out and follow it and that sort of thing. But I found it extremely useful for very simple point-to-point types of integrations. My go-to example is my Jira integration, where I'm calling a webhook from Workday, and just works extremely well. Fits very nicely in the business process, and is really easy to follow, and was easy to write. So I think I'm really excited about the tool because I think it has a great future. But I do see that there's going to be a lot of, I think, potential more to develop in terms of just getting the ease of use
Yep.
down for some of the things. I think there are some things that maybe are, especially compared to some of the other tools that are on the market, maybe a little more on the technical side still, that they could probably do some iterations on to make it simpler.
Cool. That is really really good to know. That is probably one of the more critical takes that I've heard of this tool. So that's actually great to know. And I should probably back up for maybe our users who aren't necessarily familiar with what Orchestrate for integrations is, will be, or may not necessarily be in a tool like Studio on a regular basis. So it sounds like Orchestrate almost feels like an additional tool to compete with a tool like Workday Studio. I'm not sure that Workday would describe it that way themselves. And it doesn't sound like Studio's going anywhere anytime soon. That is just always going to be available. Orchestrate just feels like an additional integration tool that will be part of our integration tool belt moving forward. Is that an appropriate take? Is there anything that I may have missed there?
It's hard to say because I think with newer tools, there's always a desire to say, well, this is going to replace the old tool, right?
Right.
And
Yes.
so I think there's that excitement
Yep.
around Orchestrate, and I've read people saying, well, we don't need Studio anymore. So I don't know. I mean, that may happen, right? They
Right.
may decide, and people may write orchestrations that completely replace Studios, and that's fine if that happens. That's great. I just at this point in time, the way the tool is working, I still write in Studio, depending on what the need is. If I want something where I feel like there's going to be a lot of complexity, a lot of different processes that I need to manage, I could not yet see myself doing that using the Orchestrate process flow. And so that could change. Like I said, I think people are really invested in the newer tool and wanting to get it to that point. and maybe I'll feel that way at some point as well. But yeah, I don't feel that way yet. But I do, like I said, I see I'm using it for my needs when I see an opportunity, and I am excited about it and I do enjoy it. So I do see the benefits of it, and I'll continue to use it. So I am excited about the future of the tool.
So I'm curious to know your perspective on this. So let's take, for example, like someone like myself. I definitely love getting to operate in the functional side of Workday, but definitely love to operate in the technical aspect of Workday as well. And I am very green, very, very green, especially when it comes to a tool like Workday Studio. What would your advice be for somebody who's starting out in Workday integrations for learning a specific tool? Would you make the case for learning Extend, orchestrations? Would you make the case for learning Workday Studio? What would your advice be there?
Yeah, I think it really depends for me on what solutions are needed, right? Because I
Yeah,
think the best way to learn is to have a problem to solve.
absolutely.
And
Yeah.
and the problem that you're trying to solve is going to determine the best tool
Yep.
to that you'll use. So it's kind of it's an interesting question in terms of I'm not sure if I would pick any one tool to start with. I do think that there are probably a lot of clear problems for an orchestrate solution, for instance.
Yeah.
So, a lot of just I need to get this data out to this other application, and to do that, I just need to call, a web service or some sort of API external to Workday. So that's a clear problem. You can clearly define that, and there's not a lot of ambiguity, but you can clearly have an impact and clearly get a great result by working on something like that. So it may be easier, kind of going back, we've talked about that Orchestrate's fairly accessible to get started with. So it may be easier to get going with something like that, as maybe an introduction to that group of tools. It if you can find something that is an existing where there's already an existing solution, and use the existing solution as a pattern, and then maybe you're just tweaking that. I think that's also another great way to learn. And with that, I'm thinking about Studio.
Yeah. Yep.
So if you find something, so here's an example that I have that I think would be a great way to learn Studio is, so we have the recruiting module,
Okay. Yep.
and our recruiters are using Workday Recruiting. We're currently using Zoom to conduct interviews, but we want to explore, what would that look like if we had Google Meet as the way to do our video interviews. And there is a custom studio app that we're currently using that is set up for Zoom. So part of my if I was new to Studio, part of what I would want to do is like, let me take a look at that existing app that I have. Let me dig into it. What would I have to change to call the APIs for Google? What would I have to program to make that work there? And I think that could be a fantastic way to sort of learn and get more exposure to Studio. So yeah, definitely depends on what you're trying to solve, the tool that you pick for it. But I think any of those tools, you probably can't go wrong in just becoming more technical and learning more technology.
Awesome. That is absolutely incredible advice. I appreciate that. That was probably very selfish on my part. So thanks for entertaining that. And yeah, I love that approach. I mean, even just across the board, if you can take a contributed solution and really try to reverse engineer that to the point of, how do I make certain adjustments that will make the solution like perfect for my tenant and for my organization. I think that's an incredibly underrated approach to just about anything in Workday. I love that. So thank you so much for sharing that. We're about to delve into a realm that is very, very popular and very hot right now, but just want to throw this caveat out there. Actually, I'll speak for myself. I am not an expert in this next topic by any means. And I think this is just going to be a fun little exchange to speculate, what the future will be like. So with that lead, I want to talk about artificial intelligence, AI, and the Workday ecosystem. So obviously, AI has been a super hot topic. Definitely feels like, at least for Workday, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my experience is that AI has kind of been a little bit slow from the Workday perspective. This sounds really bad, and I'm so sorry, Workday. It feels like a little bit of a non-factor at this point in time. But I know that it will not stay this way. And in fact, Workday is rolling out, some AI tools directly within the system itself. So I wanted to get your perspective on AI in Workday. How do you think, in the long term, AI impacts the Workday ecosystem?
Yeah, and I'm probably the worst person to ask about AI, because frankly, I explored it a little bit, and got to the point of playing around a little bit with some of the bots that were out there.
Yep.
But then I started seeing like everybody turning themselves into unicorns and things like that, and I sort of like pulled back a little bit. But I will say a couple things. I think the Workday has been working on AI from what I've seen. I know from the work that I've seen with Orchestrate, for instance.
Yes.
They've
Yep.
built in a lot of connectors for AWS and being able to call their AI platform. And so I think there are things going on behind the scenes that don't necessarily surface yet. I do think that from Workday's perspective, I think that they see this as something that they're going to devote a lot of attention to, and also sort of make it a key thing that is highlighted for their customers. I know that a lot of customers are interested and asking around this, and I think Workday is going to rise to that. But some of the things that I've seen, for instance, I was in the preview tenant the other day and starting to prepare for the next update, and I was going through and looking at a performance review, and I still don't know exactly what happened because I sort of got this pop-up and then it went away, and so that concerns me a little bit. But there was a pop-up that said something to the effect of, hey, would you like me to help you write this review, or
Oh,
would you like some
yes.
help editing this review, right? And it gave the appropriate warnings. It said, hey, I'm going to send this information outside of your company, and we're going to be aware of the text that you've entered, so don't send us any private information. So all of that was great. I mean, Workday's doing its job, but that's where I kind of stopped with that feature, right? Because a lot of things and that I'm going to be writing is probably specific to my company, and do I want that going out to a third party service to process that and interpret it and try to help? Do I trust that my users are all going to understand when that pops up that they should not be entering information that's, personal and private and, super sensitive for the company. So that part of it really gave me pause. And it's great, that Workday can deliver these tools and really be thinking about how they can be on the forefront of this new technology. But I don't know if companies are ready to take advantage of it yet.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so, and I know a lot of people are doing it on the side in terms of they're going out to a lot of these services and entering information outside of the corporate applications and getting things back, and then we're putting that information in the corporate application. But it's a big difference when we start to say, okay, now we're going to allow the corporate application to directly talk to these services. So so that's something to think about. And like I said, I'm probably not a great person to talk about because I'm not sure where I'm coming down on some of this yet, and I haven't really had the opportunity to see where we're in the current state where it can help me right now.
Gotcha.
Because I don't want AI to write code for me. I'll write my own code. Thank you. I don't want AI to write my job descriptions for me because when I do that, I'll most of the time so far when I've used tools, I've been able to do searches and use my own writing to find what I needed. So it wasn't really that helpful, and I actually probably spent more time trying to craft what it provided into something that was useful.
Yep.
So at least today, I haven't really found a lot of uses for those tools. It's not to say that we're not going to hit this next big jump, and we all want to be prepared for that. So I'll continue to learn, and I'll continue to keep an open mind. But I think for me, we're not there yet, I guess, in terms of the tooling.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. So I actually have used AI for just a couple things that aren't necessarily like fundamental to Workday. So we do a ton of like internal communication. Again, very small team, so we wear a lot of hats. So upcoming changes, I'll oftentimes record a video highlighting those changes and things of that sort. And I'll use a tool like ChatGPT to kind of brain dump what I'm hoping to communicate, and essentially what that new feature does. And so I'll say, I'll dump something in and say, repeat this back to me in 2 or 3 sentences, right? So being able to just freely brain dump and then have this thing poorly, I should say, kind of give me a summary of that, and then kind of massaging that to actually be useful. It's just one example, right? But that's not impacting the system, that much. So I would absolutely agree. I feel bad saying this, but I would say that AI within Workday is kind of a non-factor at this point in time, right? We're recording, at the end of August in 2024.
Yeah, I have a feeling that's going to change. I have a
Yes.
feeling there's going to be, a big push, and and like I said, I'll keep an open mind, and we'll see where it goes. But I'm looking forward to whatever comes.
Yeah, and this is great because we're literally recording right before Workday Rising, and I'm sure they're gonna just make us look like the biggest losers and the biggest idiots for having this conversation.
I mean, yeah, we'll have to look to see how it goes, and then hindsight, we'll check it out. Yeah.
I will say this though. I think if there's going to be any use of AI that is just like that absolutely blows me away, and a use that I would love to see, it would be within understanding how to connect certain business objects to other business objects in Workday, and like beyond that, how to create the most efficient or the best calculated field for your use case. I would love to see a tool like that.
Yeah.
But to your point, I think we're kind of far away from that at this point. So I want to ask you a couple questions that I am so far asking everybody, just to see what you respond. Looking forward, what is one thing that you see happening within the ecosystem that you're most excited about or looking forward to?
I I really like how we're delivering these hub experiences in Workday, and to me that's exciting because I really am challenged at a lot of my a lot of the companies I've worked for, have been in the tech space, and they have their own engineers, and a lot of times the response will be to some of the user interface, some of the user design for Workday is like, well, I could have written that and I could have done it better, right? So,
Of course.
and again, not putting down Workday, but this has just kind of been my experience,
Yeah.
and so having a better UI, from the perspective of the end users. And I'm particularly kind of, highlighting the use of hubs, which have a little bit more of a, clean look and feel to them compared to some of the older interfaces. That's what I'm really excited about because it makes my life easier when it's easier to convince and get an end user excited about using Workday.
Yes.
And
Yep.
it's especially nice when there's just a really nice UI. I have been asking probably for I don't know, feels like 7 years or so now for more control over over the branding within Workday. I you know we're I'm not aware of anything coming out new on that, so I would love, just if Workday listens to this, I would love to hear, see something like that come out.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
but yeah, I think that's what I'm looking most forward to in some of the things that I've seen coming out is really getting these just incremental in some cases, but much needed improvements in the user experience.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. And yes, I would definitely second that vote in terms of branding. I think we're kind of a parent company to a lot of different organizations, and those organizations are so stuck on we want our logo available, we want to this color instead of this, and absolutely more functionality around that would be amazing. So Shannon, what would be the best piece of advice you would give someone in the ecosystem just trying to move forward in their career?
I really encourage everyone to experiment and try something new, learn something new, because that is the way to really grow in your career. It's a way to grow, wherever you are at your company today. It's a way to grow into a new career if you're looking for something. Um, I think it's easy to sort of get caught up in the day to day, and even doing well, performing well in your day to day role. While that's important, it's not going to get you where you want to be, right? It'll
Mm,
keep you where you're at. So I think one of the things that I've always tried to do throughout my career is look for opportunities to learn something new, expand what I'm doing, and just experiment. And so that's really the advice that I would give to anyone who's really trying to grow is if you got to push yourself, you got to and maybe fail, right? And it's okay
yeah.
to try something new and fail, but don't sort of just get stuck in that same mode. Even like I said, even if you're performing well, really push yourself to try something new, do something new, and learn.
I love that. That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. Um, so Shannon, how can people connect with you? Where can people find some additional solutions or some of your other work?
Best way to connect if you're looking to see some of my posts, like we discussed earlier. I'm on LinkedIn at LinkedIn's slash S Whitley, so it's SWHITLEY. I'm also on GitHub, So I have several solutions on GitHub, again with the S. Whitley name that you can search for on GitHub. Those are really my core areas, and that I like to connect with people. I have my solutions and in my posts out there.
Awesome. And again, I am going to give a shout out again to those areas. If you're not already following, definitely be sure to follow. It is well worth your time. And just one click of a button is all it takes. So would highly recommend that. Shannon, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it. I am just so grateful for people like you in our ecosystem. You are definitely one of the first people that comes to mind whenever the phrase, standing on the shoulders of giants is tossed out in this ecosystem. So appreciate all the work that you're putting in, all the work that you have put in, and I'm excited to see what's coming down the pike. So thank you again.
Well, I really appreciate that. Very humbling to hear that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for listening to this conversation. Be sure to check out the helpful links and resources mentioned in the conversation in the podcast show notes below. Also, be sure to connect with me on LinkedIn and Twitter to stay in the loop about future podcast episodes and Workday tips. I'm Christian Delcid on LinkedIn and at cdelcid21 on Twitter/X. I would love to hear any feedback about how to make this podcast better, so be sure to subscribe, connect with me, comment, and share with others. Thank you so much again. Have a great day. The Unsafe Harbor podcast is my personal passion project, and it is completely separate from my role with my current employer or the Workday organization. The ideas expressed on this podcast are my own and do not represent my employer or the Workday organization.